Hello, and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host, Fred.
Hello.
Hello, Fred. How are you doing this week?
I'm good. I literally just a few hours ago got back from my brother's bachelor party, so I'm a little woozy, but I'm hanging in there and ready to talk Twilight Zone.
Now, are you back in New York, or are you broadcasting live from your brother's closet in California?
It's my mom's office, so a similar level of dignity. But yeah, I'm in California right now.
Cool. And how does the office stack up against the sweet setup you had at our mutual friends?
It's pretty good. You might hear some NPR in the background, and my mom might come in and ask me what I'm doing with my life. But
so what was a crazy, Fred Brothers bachelor party weekend like? Is it too hot for TZ? Or?
I would love it if I was like, so here's what we did, and there was just a long sustained censor bleep. But no, it was pretty fun. We went river rafting on the American River, which was pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
And then we also rented a cabin, and there was some light hedonism. But it's kind of funny. His friends. See, now I really am wondering if I need the censoring bleep for this, but right. they like to enter into an altered state and play like complicated board games together. That's kind of the thing that they do. Yeah. And so we played this really complicated board game called like Talismania. Have you ever heard of this? I'm thinking yeah, definitely.
This is a crazy bachelor party, Fred. Hang on. Let me get the censor beep. You're playing board games in a cabin with a bunch of dudes. All right.
It's pretty wild.
I like what I hear so far.
Well, look, we were all buzzed when we did it. We were tipsy as hell, John.
The Mai Tais had been flowing.
When I landed on the Elven Castle, things got pretty wild. No, I don't know. It's just fun. I know that you like those board games too. It's kind of like a thing now. I don't know. I find them.
Yeah. To be fair, I like one board game to an extreme, and I've played a couple of the others, but I'm not as much into the thing.
All right. Well, I don't know. I found it's kind of like for people who are scared of real role-playing games or something. Right. I don't know. It's weird. Exactly. How's your week been?
I did have one little we do have a Twilight Zone podcast sometimes. Sure. I did have some Twilight Zone follow-up we mentioned off-air a couple weeks ago, but forgot to get it on record for posterity. Several weeks ago, we discussed The Whole Truth, and true to form with our podcast, about a week later, I sat down and read Rod Serling's short story that he produced some years afterwards and collected in an anthology. And just to give credit where credit is due, you'd kind of speculated about why Khrushchev was in there, what the point of that not so great joke was. But the short story spells it out pretty clearly that Khrushchev had bought the crappy car to take back to the Soviet Union to show like, this is the apex of American capitalism, doesn't it suck? And that was, supposedly ripped from the headlines. Right. Very funny in context.
Quite hilarious. It's like Putin downloads our podcast. This is the apex of American podcasts.
Exactly.
Anyway, so let's get down to the Twilight Zone of the day, which is
Static, a second season episode, the 56th of the production run. It aired originally on March 10th, 1961.
Hey, Mr. Lindsay, what's that?
That's a radio, boy.
Yeah, what's it do?
Don't you know what a radio is, boy?
Well, sure, but I've never seen one like that before.
No one ever saw one quite like that. Because that's a very special sort of radio. In its days, circa 1935, its type was one of the most elegant consoles on the market. Now, with its fabric-covered speakers, its peculiar yellow dial, its serrated knobs, it looks quaint and a little strange. Mr. Ed Lindsay is going to find out how strange very soon, when he tunes into the Twilight Zone.
This is the rare one where Serling needs the setup.
Yeah.
Really.
I was about to say it was cool of Rod to do those voices at the beginning.
Rod's like, all right, Timmy, I need you to say this. Just get me out there. I'll take it from here.
The radio that they're talking about. Anyway, our own Serling-style intros require no extra actor participation. I think I should go first. Mine's kind of wacky and high concept here.
Okay, now does yours need any kind of special accompaniment?
I sent
You're
you
like,
a clip.
I'm not like Serling. I don't need all these fancy tricks to do my Serling intro.
But get the clip ready, seriously.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent you a clip. Just hit it whenever it feels appropriate in the middle of all this. I mean, you haven't heard it, but you'll be able to figure it out. All right, here we go.
All right, I'll do my best.
Welcome to Johnny and the Fred Man in the morning. The craziest, laziest, what will they say nextiest duo in the tri-internet area. They're the last men standing who aren't afraid to tell it like it is about a 60-year-old television show.
I really don't know. I kind of just wanted to hit it constantly.
Yeah,
I'm just not sure. I'm trying to show restraint.
No
Okay.
restraint is needed.
Right.
It's that uncensored, uncut, raw take on the set decorating skills of Henry Grace that you crave. And things really get wild when Martin Grahams Jr. stops by. This week it's Static Week. All the nostalgia, all the wistful monologues, and a Tommy Dorsey rock block that'll have you begging for mercy. On WTZN, Radio Twilight Zone.
Radio ding.
I don't know. Yeah, I feel like we could have there was like a kind of a laggy period around episode 100 to 110. Maybe if we just broken that out a while ago.
Yeah. Air horn really livens things up. All right, what do you got?
Nothing at that level. Wow.
Well, feel free to use the air horn if you want to just
I might have to.
Yeah.
Over the years, our program has left audiences shocked, enchanted, bewildered, and bemused. From hungry huge heads from the Horsehead Nebula to grimy gremlins grinding gears on great big aeroplanes, we have presented stunning image after stunning image that settles into the medulla oblongata and opens a house of haunts and horrors. Tonight we present perhaps our most potent image of panic-inducing parable. A tale about an elderly man tinkering with a semi-functional old radio. Such fantabulous fables can only be found in the most twilighty of zones. The Twilight Zone.
See? Worse wonders. No, that was a good one. I like that. Although I will say, you when you said medulla oblongata, I was like, oh man, a real sweet John pun was coming.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
Oops.
Yeah.
Well,
the doula that you ought. Oh, let's move along. This is a second season episode of the show. We're about to spoil it, so check it out beforehand if you want to avoid that tragic scenario. It's available for streaming on Netflix, Hulu, whatever Amazon's thing is, and also buy the DVDs and Blu-rays. But, spoiler warning. So, the episode opens, unfortunately, on a video shot of a sort of a boarding house. This is one of the few video episodes in the Twilight Zone run. CBS saved money by filming 6 of them on video. They sucked, they moved on, but we're stuck with them. The video
We were
sucks,
smart enough to space out our 4th seasons. We didn't think too clearly about the video episodes, so you're getting basically like 5 out of 6 in the last month or 2 of our shows. Sorry.
It's kind of funny because I didn't really think about it, but I think I sort of subconsciously avoided those. The video, it's like, it's not something you think about when you're not watching the episode because like the episode kind of lives in your head, but then when you're watching it, it's like, oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Totally.
We're in a boarding house. Did it seem like, was the boarding house specifically for old people? Is that a thing?
You know, as the episode develops, we get hints that, you know, it shouldn't be an exclusively old person boarding house, but it does seem, I mean, maybe the young people are out bopping around, not just sitting watching the TV, but I don't know. The condo I used to live in had a number of elderly people. Maybe it's just like once you get kind of a majority, like a snowball effect kind of goes into place. I
like to imagine you living in a condo with a bunch of elderly people, and you're like, yeah, these old geezers don't know what's up. Anyway, time to record my Twilight Zone podcast.
They just wouldn't appreciate this stuff.
Hit the air horn. Anyway, I'll rue the day I ever sent you that clip, I'm sure. Anyway, we see our main character, Mr. Ed Lindsay. He's playing a board game with a professor smoking a pipe as everybody else watches TV. Now, in that scenario, playing a board game with the professor smoking a pipe, what game do you think it should be?
I mean, it's probably like sorry or trouble or something, but, they went a little more sophisticated.
Went for checkers. Right. It's like our nightly game of chutes and ladders.
Yeah, I'd like to say this is like a comment, like, they
maybe.
don't even, but I don't think it's, I don't think it's good enough to that. It led me to a different question.
Yeah.
Because the professor is kind of distracted. He's not paying close attention to the game. And our hero gets a triple jump. I wonder if there's numbers to back this up. Like, how much likely is it to get a triple jump in a normal play of checkers? Like,
especially against a professor.
Against just any adult. Like, okay, you might be able to, like, con a 6-year-old into moving in a certain... Like, I feel like it's hard to even, get that positioning to happen.
Yeah, you'd have to really try.
So I don't know. A double jump, sure. Everyone's been double jumped here or there. We've all been there, but a triple jump, gotta be working for it. I think it just made me think of like, somewhere I imagine there's like professional checker tournaments and like, is there like legend of some guy getting a triple jump in like competitive play?
First of all, in professional checkers, I don't think there really is because that game has sort of been beaten, right? Like you can always force a draw. Yeah, there's like a solution to it. Yeah. So I mean, maybe there is, and maybe it's like timed really quickly. But
I know there's a name for those kind of games, but I didn't know that checkers was one of them.
Oh, like a solved game or whatever.
Yeah,
like tic-tac-toe, or you can always force a draw or whatever. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Have you been losing to your 3-year-old?
God, I knew she had something going.
Watch the corners, John. Watch the corners. Anyway, the basic dynamic here is that Ed Lindsay, our hero, he's kind of an older man, maybe like early 60s. He doesn't like that everybody's watching TV, and he kind of makes some kind of like scoffing noises every time something comes on the screen. And
we get a little sample, which trivia leads me to believe these are supposed to be very clever, biting satires of television, but I can't even tell through the lens of time. So here's a little bit of a cigarette ad.
Green, cool grass. The touch, the smell of green, cool grass. Now brought to you for the first time in green, the new chlorophyll cigarette. The smoke that doesn't smell like tobacco, but smells good. Green, cool, like grass.
Is there any chance that was a very sly joke that got by the censors, or are they just trying to show like how vapid like commercials could be with like?
I think it's supposed to be a generalized parody of the way the commercials are filmed,
right?
But
so
I don't.
And all.
But I don't know.
It's just interesting with like the terminology of grass for marijuana had been around by then, right?
Saying,
so it's just interesting.
Hydro,
that the censors
broccoli.
wouldn't have it. It's just interesting the censors wouldn't have a problem when they're like green, like grass, a great smoking grass. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the censors, they were innocent as the people, making the show. So they're like trying to get people not to say the word guts on TV. They're not really thinking at the next level.
Yeah, so, but as you said, the first 10 minutes of our protagonist dialogue is somewhere along the lines of this.
It's undeveloped, but within 10 years, with the coming of water people, it will be a veritable oasis of lovely.
An oasis, yes.
Only green. The new green, cool grass.
Yes, let's all roll in the grass.
Smell,
the green,
the new
cool,
chlorophyll
beautiful
cigarette
grass.
can make that
25 operators just waiting to take your call.
It's not exactly Crow T Robot there.
I mean, it's not like it's like somehow they shot the audio and video too. It's like it's just this barely intelligible mumbling for the first 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's weird to start your episode with angry mumbling. It's not the best hook. Maybe they were counting on the triple jump to lure people in.
Maybe this is the clearest signifier that this isn't a Serling episode because he's not really sticking it to the television.
Yeah. Eventually, Lindsay gets sick of mumbling angrily at the TV, and he goes down into the basement and pulls the dust cloth off a big old radio. And while he does it, there's a kid very conveniently watching him through a grate. I found that to be weird.
Wasn't there a similar setup in Village of the Giants of them being in a basement and people communicating through the grate? Am I imagining that? Hot or not setting?
I don't know. It presupposes an era where there was a whole lot of through the basement grate communication. I don't know. seems very outdated in a way. People just don't talk through their basement grates anymore.
I feel like, maybe you just haven't lived in a space with a basement. That's a key component. When we were shopping for houses, we wanted a nice grate so we could talk to the neighbor children.
Yeah, exactly. It's all digitized now.
Yeah, people are just on their social media grates.
Basement grate filter on Snapchat. I don't know. It's hard to even think of. I'm not even hip enough to make fun of it.
Now, did you notice that I felt like the radio looked like it could be buddy with the brain center at Whipple's?
Yeah, it's got a mean, ugly face.
Do you see the face, Fred? Yeah. Twisted, evil.
Like the way the dials and the speaker are set up, it looks a little bit like a face. I don't know. I wonder if they intentionally chose that.
I would imagine. I don't know. I imagined because I thought it was going to have a payoff in that direction, but I guess it never really does. So maybe it was more coincidental.
It's definitely magical, but it's not exactly like a person. You know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, in the next scene, the neighbor boy who talked to Lindsay through the grate has been hired to help him haul the radio up the stairs to his apartment. And they kind of pass a couple secondary characters on the way up. We have Vinnie Brown, who's kind of the boarding house hottie, and then we've got the professor who we've already seen. Now, there's a very oddly placed insert shot in this moment. Did this strike you as funny as well?
What am I looking for?
Well,
Remind me.
It's like they're hauling up the radio up the stairs, and then we get an insert shot of the professor looking at them and smoking his pipe. And it's just weird because, like, he has no emotion on his face. Like, they cut to him and they're like, here's what the professor's thinking about that radio. And it's just, like, completely inert.
Inscrutable.
So it just comes
he
across
plays it
as
very close to the vest.
Yeah, it's like, what does the professor think? Nothing. Maybe he's still contemplating his next checker strategy. I don't know.
He's a broken man, Fred.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got that 1,000-yard stare still.
Yeah. Anyway, up in the room, Lindsay kicks the little squirt kid out of there with a kind of funny little pwn. Like he like gives him a 50 cents and he's like, "Go buy yourself a switchblade." I kind of like that. Apparently, just to jump ahead to trivia, CBS tried to cut that out of the episode, but Serling stuck to his guns or his switchblades.
Cool. Very, very bold.
Yeah, badass. And he gets to working on the radio and he finds sort of an old-timey sounding jazz song, and Getting Sentimental Over You by Tommy Dorsey starts playing. And then we get a little bit of static, and we're on WPDA. Did you take the trouble of looking up that station? I did. It's apparently an adult alternative rock station out of Jeffersonville, New York. And it kind of made me wonder if there's like a 555 area code for phone numbers.
Right.
Like if there's some version of that for radio call stations.
Funny, when I Googled WPDA, the first thing I got was the Western Pennsylvania Dressage Association.
Also relevant to this episode.
I feel like maybe I should look them up. I've been trying to, meet people.
Yeah, exactly. Did you ever see that Colbert Report where he was talking about dressage? Because I think it was Romney's wife. Yeah. He referred to it as competitive horse prancing.
Right. There's a lot more to it than that, Fred. That's very, very facile of you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's the equivalent of that, if that was like a unclaimed radio ID at the time or not.
Next up, it's dinner time at this sort of old folks boarding house thing. And Lindsay is humming the song Getting Sentimental Over You. But his reverie is shot down cold when he starts talking about the radio station.
Tommy Dorsey, they're playing it direct from the...
Direct? Tommy Dorsey's dead.
You don't say.
Yeah, he died a few years ago.
What about Major Bowes?
Who?
Major Bowes.
Never heard of him.
No, you wouldn't. Well, he's dead, too. I heard both Major Bowes and Tommy Dorsey this afternoon on the radio.
Couldn't be.
Couldn't be. Bragg, how is it that a man with such a tiny brain could have such a big mouth?
Pwned.
Yeah, I love the harshness of Tommy Dorsey's dead. Find a new trombonist. Wait, what'd you say?
I called in the hit myself.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sleeps with the fishes.
It's just a great line. I don't know. I just feel like that line has never occurred elsewhere in any script anywhere. Tommy Dorsey is dead. But anyway,
I don't know.
I mean, do you know Tommy Dorsey at all, or?
I'd heard the name before, but I mean, I know that.
I used to blast it in my old condo.
I would rile up the old folks like crazy.
Nice.
No, I was familiar with the melody that played. Getting sentimental over you.
I mean, I don't know him all that well. It's just like a name I associate with like the big band era, kind of like a. He was a band
guy
leader,
Lombardo's like sworn enemy. Or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it was like a total East Coast West Coast feud.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so there's some back and forth about the fact that Lindsay was listening to this radio station that was only playing dead people, and there's some discussion about, well, maybe it was a tape or an old recording, and it's sort of like the issue is left open. When Lindsay goes to try to prove his point, he gets a portable radio, brings it into the dining room, and tries to find WPDA, but he can't, and is harshly mocked for his inability to find the radio station.
Yeah, I think it's around here where I made the note, running static under everyone's dialogue was a great choice. Yeah. Like, did you notice that was a pretty constant refrain of like...
Yeah. It's a little grating, yeah. I don't know, it's like thus far the big dramatic linchpin is, can he find the radio station? The stakes are low.
There's all the drama of like a long car trip.
Yeah, exactly.
And going through rural Alabama. It's like, will he find something worth listening to?
Yeah. And if my experience is any indicator, the answer is no. Anyway, so next up, the professor and Mrs. Brown are heading up to Lindsay's room to listen to this mythical WPDA station, but it's nothing but static. They're going to call the station to find out if like something's wrong with the transmitter. But when Lindsay hops on the phone, apparently the operator says the WPDA has been out of business for ominously 13 years. And
Tommy Dorsey is dead.
Yeah, exactly. Deader than a doornail. I saw his body. Surprised you didn't hit the air horn on that one. And it's sleep at the wheel, sleep at the horn. But anyway, they discussed like some, maybe he, it's coming from a far off place. It has a shortwave signal. Who knows?
Right.
But the professor and Mrs. Brown head out and in private share some worried chit chat about maybe Lindsay's kind of losing it.
Okay. Professor, is it so impossible?
Possible? Now that's a dangerous sort of a word to use nowadays, Vinny. We take things for granted today that we called impossible just a few years ago. Let's call it highly unlikely.
This is all revolving around like hearing old radio programs or old media. It's basically like the idea of our podcast. It's like, I doubt they could talk about old shows that ran 40 years ago. Yeah. He's probably insane, but we'll wait.
Yeah. But we put a man on the moon. So it's hypothetically possible there could be a radio station broadcasting old music. The two are on the same level.
Before we get emails, we understand that the moon landing is 8 years from now.
Yes, I did.
Yes. We got it.
Back in his room...
with the woman in red, I got it. Okay, I knew. It was a joke. It was a joke, people.
Should we just preemptively play the clip? Anyway, back in his room alone with the professor and Mrs. Brown gone, Lindsay is able to find WPDA, but it's not playing Tommy Dorsey this time. We're getting a very important announcement from the president, but it's the president from the past. It's Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I did enjoy
how are we supposed to know that? As a young, hip millennials that we are, we just can't keep trying. This is like one of the few times we get that something's not quite right.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't have been enough just to hear Roosevelt's voice. The announcer is like, we have an announcement from the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Luckily, they weren't like, an announcement from President Eisenhower nearing the end of his fourth term, but about is like 59, 60. Wait, what?
Yeah. We go to commercial and we come back. It's a little bit in the future. Ed is dashing into the TV room to get Ms. Brown and the professor because he's found WPDA again. But of course, as soon as they arrive, it turns back to more pleasant, charming static that seems to fill this episode. The professor, Johnny Thirdwheel, leaves, giving Ed and Mrs. Brown some hot QT.
What do you want?
Oh, nothing, Ed. I just thought we might talk a little. Do you mind?
No, talk away. Just don't come too close. I might start climbing the walls, barking like a dog.
Okay.
That's what you think, isn't it? That's what y'all think. Poor old Ed. He's gone ding-dong, lost his marbles.
No, that's
or
not what
something.
I think at all.
So I just want to make sure we had that, in the record, so that from now on, for the future of the show, I have
Ding-dong.
ready to go. Yeah. It's kind of like the counter to Ring a Ding.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed he didn't say, I've gone ring-a-ding crazy. Yeah, so, she's worried about him, and he's very obstreperous about it. But it turns out that they have a past, which is sort of revealed through this nice monologue that Mrs.
A somewhat
Mrs.
abstruse past, you might say.
I might. I actually don't know what abstruse means. I do know what obstreperous means, but what does abstruse mean?
I think abstruse is just like a fancy way of saying unclear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, difficult to understand, obscure. And I've looked up obstreperous, but I don't remember what it is. It's just like, is it noisy and difficult to control?
There you go.
I have a habit in when I read on my Kindle, whenever I see a word I don't know, I look up the dictionary definition and highlight it, but they don't actually stick. I've highlighted, hundreds of words over the years, but every time they come up, I just have to highlight them again. All right. So anyway, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I have a bad habit of just like using words that I only vaguely understand and getting into trouble with that. So I'm kind of happy that obstreperous panned out loosely.
Good.
But I remember when I was a kid, very young, I was like going over to a friend's house. We were talking about how my dad was German. I was like 8 or 9 or something. And the friend was like, "Oh, he's German. Is he a Nazi?" And I was like, "No, he's not a Nazi. He's a neo-Nazi." Because I thought neo meant like no, like anti. Yeah. So that was the first example, a long train of embarrassment.
All right, well, that's a little of your backstory. Now we'll get a little bit of our character's backstory.
We met in this boarding house in 1940, and it was here that you proposed. I wanted to set the date, but your mother was ill, you remember, and so you decided to wait. And that's just what we did. We waited and waited until by the time your mother died, it was too late.
But Vinny, I'm not going to sit here and
Don't
listen
interrupt me. I've got to get this thing said. Oh, I know you don't care anything about me now. I'm just a silly woman who watches television, dyes her hair, grows old. You don't even like me anymore. And I don't blame you.
You kind of get the feeling like this woman has an idea of what this episode is about, and this episode kind of has a different idea.
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of feel like she wandered into the room and was like, "Here's actually what the plot's about."
Yeah. I don't know. I really like this monologue. I mean, it goes on from there, but it talks about how.
Oh, I've got a little more. I think that maybe fills in
just
the gap.
about this time every year would have been our anniversary. You start getting unhappy. You want to go back to 1940 and start all over again. Why do you think you keep hearing Getting Sentimental Over You on the radio? That was our song, Ed. And those programs, we used to listen to them together. In the dark.
Ew.
Meow. It's like in the bedroom.
Yeah.
You can put that at the end of any sentence.
Yeah. We had a red-hot radio-based romance. I don't know. I like that a lot. I mean, maybe it does feel a little bit like there's this whole Twilight Zone episode going on, and then she comes in and is like, actually, it's about me. But I do think, like, I like that monologue a lot. I don't know. Did you not like that?
I mean, it's fine. It's just, I feel like this is coming, like, I don't know, around minute 20 of the episode or something. And, like, not like, honestly, they haven't really set up a very exciting, mystery or whatever for us. It's, like I kind of alluded to, this episode has all the excitement of old people listening to radio. Yeah.
I know.
But it just kind of, like, felt like they're getting near the end and they're like, oh, we got to have something to hook this up to. But it hadn't really been hinted at or suggested in a way. It's just kind of like, all right, in comes this woman to explain what's going on.
They set up kind of like this, relationship between them that was highly abstrusely, cantankerously obstreperous.
It's a little more Sam and Diane.
Yeah, right. Well, they set up this like kind of like harsh back and forth relationship. Right. So this is kind of, the payoff on that. I don't know.
It's not a bad monologue per se. I mean, the actress does fine. I guess it just, I don't know. I want to say it felt out of place, but like at least it was some kind of like, drama injected into it. So
Ed can't take the drama and he can't take the sincerity, so he listens to her monologue and then kicks her out. And as soon as she leaves, he settles in, and WPDA comes back on.
I did think the image of him kind of overlapping to comedic old time radio that hit a little close to home for me. Like, it's really funny. Like, get it? Jack Benny's cheap. Like, laugh. Come on, honey.
We already had the talk last week about trying to get your significant other.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah. Oh god. Anyway, in the next scene, Ed arrives home and he's all happy and smug about radio. He really is kind of brag ass about it all. And when he gets up to his room, the radio done disappeared. It turns out the professor and Mrs. Brown took the radio to the junk dealers. So he runs over there and gets it and buys it back. This is like
the weirdest like padding confused. Like
it's funny because like as I was saying it, I'm like, this really resolved rather quickly. It's like, we put your radio out on the curb, and he's like, oh, I'll just go get it. And he gets it,
and we get like a couple minute scene of him walking over, negotiating with a person. There's like a little banter, but it's just like, what in the world is this scene doing here?
Yeah, it's not really accomplishing much. I don't know. It's also weird too because it's like it doesn't really fit what the professor and Mrs. Brown feel about it all. But anyway, he after some late attempts at padding, he gets the radio back and plugs it back in his room, and Getting Sentimental Over You starts playing, and then we get a cut, and his door opens, and Mrs. Brown comes in. Only it's not Mrs. Brown of 1960. It's, I think, supposed to be Mrs. Brown of 1940. And when we cut over to Ed Lindsay, I also think is supposed to be younger. And this is an interesting thing because, like, we normally take episodes to task for putting actors in old makeup only to take it off younger to reveal their younger self. They went the opposite way this time, where it was like real old people and then tried to make them look young again. And I'm not sure it's any better. I think it was in fact worse.
I don't know if it's worse. Yeah. It's just kind of like, it was very much where it's like, I get what you're doing. Yeah. You're not really showing your work though. Yeah. Like, I understand what you're saying, but
it's just weird. They're like, we're young, but you're not.
Younger. Yeah. Kind of like, that might have been you like a week ago.
Yeah. And in better clothes and with some, he has hair.
You done up your hair.
Yeah. So, nice. But anyway, also they're in like a different setting. Like, they're in, presumably the home that they did their courting in the 40s. And so he's gone back into the past. He's got a second chance. And Serling, how do you feel about that?
Around and around she goes, and where she stops, nobody knows. All Ed Lindsay knows is that he desperately wanted a second chance, and he finally got it. Through a strange and wonderful time machine called a radio in the Twilight Zone.
That around and around she goes, where she stops, nobody knows, is not a total non sequitur, as it turns out. That's like a reference to some old-timey radio thing that they talked about in the episode earlier.
Yeah, as soon as he said that, I didn't notice it during the episode, but hearing him say it just as audio, I just started Googling because I was like, I'm pretty sure that's from Old Time Radio. Yeah, it's from the original Amateur Hour.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, one of the things about this episode that's kind of weird is like traveling back in time via a radio is kind of like low impact because it's very believable that there's just a radio station playing old music. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't quite have the like Twilight Zone-y wonderment that other time travel episodes have. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but I mean, we also always have to think of context and like, I don't know, maybe they didn't have classic bandstand stations.
True. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It didn't really have oldie stations during that era, but I still think that you probably would have been able to hear Tommy Dorsey on the radio in 1960. I just think, it wouldn't have been live. Sure, you got that, but
this whole episode hinges on whether or not he heard them refer to it as direct or not.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Because he said direct, it's like, he might be crazy. We might need to put him in a home, but he might have just heard.
Yeah, I know. And then there's also the the presidential address, but that's we're barely even touched on. I don't know. It's also weird to imagine him sitting there going like, it really takes me back to listen to FDR talk about the Hitler's rise or whatever. Very weird.
It's a little odd that he's, that the setting and characters are who they are. I guess the fact that he's surrounded by older people makes it a little strange that they're also dismissive and not appreciative of the idea that he might like radio. Like, I get the idea, like, a lot of people watch television stuff. I feel like this episode would have played better if it was like 90 Years Without Slumbering and like he lived with a bunch of younger people and they were all, the through line of this episode is like a kind of a paean to old radio and a disdain for television, but when like everyone else he's surrounded with also grew up with radio but are just like, F that noise, I want my soaps. Like, I don't know, it reads a little odd.
No, you're right. It would have definitely been would have made it a little more sense that way. I think we have other episodes where like someone is like longing for a simpler time, but it seems like oftentimes in those episodes, like, maybe Walking Distance or Stop at Willoughby, I mean, those are both great episodes, but they're just longing for it in kind of a generalized way. Like the present day is too chaotic and hectic. And I kind of like that, like, that's what you think the episode is, like when he's like, oh man, those were the days, but then later on it gets revealed that what he really wanted was a second chance with a specific girl.
I thought you were going to say, in comparison, here he's just longing for a specific piece of technology.
No, but like his longing for a simpler time and his nostalgia.
It goes from the general to the specific.
Exactly, and the fact that he barely even seems aware of it until the very end is kind of cool, I think.
Like, I get it intellectually. I don't think the episode does enough to engage me to, like, really enjoy the resolution when it comes. But if it had been presented better, I do think that's like a good, way to present a kind of familiar theme of the Twilight Zone, the whole nostalgia. Like, it's a slightly different angle to take, which would be refreshing.
Right, and I think
the overall episode.
And I think it's more true to life too, because it's like, I think a lot of times people, get nostalgic about certain specific things, like like an old song or an old piece of technology, or like Super Smash Brothers, for example. Right. But oftentimes what they're really missing is like maybe a relationship with their friends, or like a something that's a little bit more emotional and meaningful, I guess. Right. And I like the way this episode does that. I also like, too, how even when the woman confronts him with what we later learn is the truth, he won't accept it. I thought that's what we think is the come to Jesus moment, where he's going to be like, you're right. He's like, no, get out of my room. You know what I mean?
Well, but then I like that confused me. I don't know, between that scene and the resolution, we get that scene, and then we get this weird, discursion where they get rid of the radio and he just goes and buys it back, and then we get him transported to the past and getting a second chance. And like, I feel like there's missing a connective tissue scene between him throwing her out and him kind of embracing this like trip to the past in a way that's understandable. Like, why this time, and why is he? It's odd. Why
this time
handled gracefully.
That's a big one,
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he even like, what am I doing in the past? Or isn't it just like kind of a scene from their life at that moment?
Yeah. I don't know. What am I doing in the past, and why am I old?
All right.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Foxtrot, Siegfried, Mark Grams Jr., Siegfried and Grams, and IMDB.
The closing monologue ends with "I'm getting sentimental over you" instead of the typical Twilight Zone theme music.
I thought you meant Serling's dialogue. I was like, I'm getting sentimental over the Twilight Zone.
In 1940, Vinny refers to Ed Wynn. One of our listeners pointed this out. Wynn made 2 guest appearances in the Twilight Zone, one for the Angels and 90 Years Without Slumbering. And his kid made an appearance too, Keenan.
Right.
In which one is that?
A World of His Own.
World of His Own, right. Yeah. So I believe that's the only time that an actor that appeared in the Twilight Zone was named.
Yeah, it is.
Actorly positions. Kind of odd. Then a little bit of criticism. When Ed is changing the TV channel back to the cigarette ad, the picture changes a moment before he turns the knob. Trivia, according to the calendar on Ed's bedroom wall, it is April 1959. Or he might just be a little behind on that. Hard to know.
Cool.
So that's my trivia. What do you got?
Grams Jr. has got some stuff. Apparently Serling wrote to Edwin before the production started, asking for like old recordings of his that he might have had of his radio days, but apparently they couldn't get him in time, so they used different shows, like the Fred Allen Show. To that point, a lot of the same radio shows that are mentioned in this episode are also mentioned in Young Man's Fancy, which we covered a couple weeks ago. So that's kind of like a little tie-in. One of the fake commercials on the TV in the beginning is a real estate ad, and the actor is a famous radio actor named Eddie Marr. Interestingly, the voice of the WPDA DJ is an actor named Bob Crane, who later starred in Hogan's Heroes, but this is technically his first screen credit, even though he's only speaking.
Yes.
Apparently someone wrote into Serling claiming to be a friend of Tommy Dorsey's widow, saying that Tommy Dorsey's dead comment was in bad taste, which I kind of agree with to some degree.
It just needed to be modulated slightly,
exactly.
Acknowledging his death wasn't really the problem. It's just like the glee that the person took in it.
I danced on his grave. And apparently, this episode I think was written by Beaumont. I've messed this up once before. But yeah, Serling was, very eager to do this episode because he himself wrote for old time radio, or wrote for just radio at the time. He wrote for old time radio. It was very popular. And one thing I just wanted to mention real quick is that I don't think any of the writers had a lot of experience writing for radio, which maybe goes a long way towards like explaining Serling's style, because like on radio, like wordiness was a good thing, just to fill up space.
That's interesting.
Whereas like someone like Matheson or Beaumont are more like fiction
from prose.
Writers. Yeah, it's like you can do an episode like The Invaders where it's like silence, and
Serling definitely had an ear for dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, we joke about some of his choices, but he was pretty sharp at coming up with very crackling dialogue. And I mean, radio was obviously dialogue first kind of medium. So,
and even though this episode wasn't written by Serling, I can't help but feel that like the Twilight Zone thing of a character trying to go back to a simpler time. The fact that like he succeeds and is happy about it, I think kind of speaks maybe somehow to Serling's like love for radio. Like this episode is definitely a bit of a wet kiss to old timey radio.
Yeah, in Zickery's book, The Twilight Zone Companion, I think he has some interview or discussion with Beaumont when Beaumont, he would have been age appropriate with probably all the other writers, even if they didn't work in the medium. They all kind of grew up with old time radio, and it was just a very interesting medium that kind of burned very brightly for a very short period of time, and then just utterly was destroyed by television. So a lot of people did kind of miss it since it was part of their childhood.
Yeah.
But so anywho, that brings us to. Do you have any others?
Nope. Bio time.
Dean Jagger played Ed Lindsay. He was possibly best remembered as the Major General in White Christmas. He also won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in the movie 12 O'Clock High.
Okay. Never even heard of it, but cool.
I think it was a war movie with Gregory Peck. I'm pretty sure. Spoke with a pronounced lisp in real life. The speech characteristic usually, IMDb says only disappeared in front of the camera. I'll say usually, because I feel like I heard a little bit of it. He and Lorraine Day were the first Mormon actors to receive stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Oh, interesting.
A little bit of interesting trivia. Robert M. Hart played Professor Ackerman. Eventually, he found himself understudying Sidney Greenstreet on an American tour of some play I didn't write down, but I just thought that was kind of funny because it was like, Yes, I imagine that individual would understudy for Sidney Greenstreet.
He's a bit pudgy. He's a bit, bit pear-shaped. In a very Sidney Greenstreetian way, I like to say.
Yes.
Yeah. Another joke that would have killed at your old condo. There we go.
Arch W. Johnson played Roscoe Bragg. He was also in Showdown with Rance McGrew, Long Distance Call. Alice Pierce played Mrs. Nielsen. This is just directly from her IMDb page. Making a career out of a post-nasal drip, this scene-stealing character comedian was one of the best Broadway and Hollywood had to offer. It's too bad, then, that she wasn't utilized in films more often for this slight, chinless, parrot-faced, squawky-voiced bundle of parentheses kill, parentheses joy, could draw laughs from a well with a mere sniffle, gulp, or stare.
It's nice of Rod Serling to write that bio for her.
It's a real, praise not praise, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, sorry not sorry type of
Exactly.
IMDb bio.
She won a posthumous comedy supporting actress Emmy for her work as neighborhood Snoop Gladys on Bewitched. And oddly, the person she replaced, I believe, Marion Lorne, also won a posthumous Emmy for the same acting category for like the same basic role.
Weird.
So,
it's like a haunted / blessed role.
Yeah, so Clegg Hoyt played the shopkeeper who was in The Bard. Stephen Talbot played the boy. He was in The Fugitive. Pat O'Malley played Mr. Llewellyn. He was in Back There in Walking Distance. Several other people were in episodes that kind of popped up otherwhere. As you mentioned, just wanted to touch on this. Bob Crane had his debut in this as a voice. He was, Hogan of Hogan's Heroes. For people, he was also in a Night Gallery episode, and most people who know who Bob Crane is probably are aware. He, in the early morning of June 29th, 1978, he was brutally murdered in his rented apartment, beaten to death while he slept, and strangled with an electrical cord. And his murder remains unsolved. So, if you have any tips, send us an email. Sorry.
John. Tommy Dorsey's dead, John. Oh, God. I'm sorry.
So they made a movie about his life with Greg Kinnear, autofocus.
Interesting.
Still haven't seen it. Written by Charles Beaumont, based on a story by Osseo Rich, who was apparently also uncredited for Dead Man's Shoes.
Like O.C. Rich, isn't it?
Well, I think Osseo was his actual name, but he sometimes was credited O.C.
Right, okay.
I don't know. Directed by Buzz Kulik. And this will close out the Kulik Ooh.
At long last.
Yes. So, Fred, here's the list. On Thursday, we leave for home, as we all remember.
Yes.
Just Bell.
Cool.
A Quality of Mercy.
Okay.
A Game of Pool.
Okay.
The Mind and the Matter.
Okay.
100 Yards Over the Rim.
Okay.
Static, this episode. The Trouble with Templeton.
Okay.
And King 9 Will Not Return.
He never really had a home run, you know what I mean? Like, all of those are... Most of those are pretty good episodes. Maybe The Mind and the Matter is accepted.
I don't think Jezebel's that good.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, Jezebel's kind of garbage. But,
Quality of
none of those are, like, huge standouts for me. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know. In my head, I built him up a little more. But I'd say... I'd really only point to two of them as being, like, good in my head. Like, that I really enjoy. That'd be Game of Pool and On Thursday We Leave for Home. I think are both very solid, if not like the best the show has to offer. So
I thought you liked Templeton too. Remember that? That's got that.
I like
really
that.
great.
I like
shot.
that moment in Templeton. I don't think it's like a wonderful episode, but it's got a really great moment, and that was a good directorial moment. So
I'm gonna say for me, it's On Thursday is my favorite episode of his, and that moment from Templeton is my favorite moment. So I don't know.
I'd say I mean I like the episode of Game of Pool better, but On Thursday might be the more impressively made episode. I don't know.
Yeah.
The Quality of Mercy, was that the one with the twitchy makeup?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll let that one slide.
So I probably, I don't know, Just Bell or Mind in the Matter, probably the low points, but it's all kind of all a nice mush.
Mush of Kulik.
There's unfortunately no MST connection this week.
Yeah, we're getting skunked here. Okay. What about ratings?
IMDb gives this episode a 6.8. So, again, our very clever idea to let the listeners pick the episodes.
I know, it's fine. It's fine. I don't think the quality of the episode really relates that strongly to the quality of our episode. And usually it's an inverse relationship. So,
exactly.
I don't know. I think I liked it a little more than you do. It's definitely a little boring. There's not too much drama. But I found it to be touching and kind of poignant in a way that normally would appeal to you. But I feel like my sentimental gland was activated by this one in a way. So it's not below a 5. I have to figure out if it's above or just sitting on it. How about you?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, especially I think I'm the bigger OTR fan among us. I mean, one of the little hobbies that I hope to one day do that I've threatened my wife with is I'd really like to get an old late 30s, early 40s radio and restore it myself. And so like seeing that sweet Whipple radio, I was into it. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like it should have grabbed me, but you could tell the writer really, his heart was really in the right place. I just don't feel like he connected the dots or like, put this together in the right way.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a bad episode per se, but talking over it, thinking about it, like I feel like this is completely like a 5 to me.
Yeah.
This is like exactly what a 5 should be. It's like, it's not good, it's not bad.
Yeah.
I'll probably forget it. The video certainly kind of adds to the probably overlooked nature of it.
Yeah.
It's...
I feel like for me, it's basically, as you said, a 5, but I really like that monologue, and it's just a nice, if you kind of like just take it as an idea in your head, I think it's really nice. I wouldn't necessarily recommend watching it, but I would recommend thinking about it. So I'm gonna give it a 6. I think I'm probably being a little bit generous. Maybe it's just because I'm home and I'm in maybe a nostalgic state of mind, but 6 from Freddie.
All right. Fair enough.
That wraps it up for Static. Thank you to no one for requesting that one. We're unfortunately going to have to miss another week next week because it's going to be my brother's wedding and John's going to be traveling to BS. Excuses, I know. But we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode getting ever closer to our grand finale. In the meantime, if you want to write us or get in touch with us, there's lots of ways to do so. John, what are they?
You can send us an email at twilightpwn, pwn@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at twilightpwn. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. You could like us on Facebook. You could listen to us on any kind of podcatcher app. And if you're over on iTunes, you can subscribe to us there. While you're there, if you leave us a rating or review, we really appreciate those. To that end, let me say thank you to Crankor1. I feel bad that Crankor without the one was taken, but I appreciate you still signed up for it. So thank you for the very nice review.
Yes, thanks much. And I also think Crankor emailed us some MST3K Connect info, which we'll probably have to delve into in a subsidiary podcast. But
he's digging deeper than we did. I did actually feel bad. I will. There were several to kind of pour through, but he did point out in the jungle. There was a connection to the actress Emily McLaughlin had been in the soap General Hospital, and as soon as I saw General Hospital, I thought, "Damn it, the 4th season, he got me!" And there was like a weird thing where instead of doing traditional shorts, they watched a couple of like 15-minute episodes of General Hospital for an episode or two. So I've been overlooking that this entire run. There might be dozens of misconnections. This could blow the show wide open right when we were almost done.
Cool. All right, well, thanks, Crankor. I don't know. We've talked about your love of old-time radio.
Yeah. What's your favorite old-time radio show, Fred? I mean, if you had to pick.
It's real hard to narrow it down. I do actually like old-time radio a lot. I kind of like to fall asleep to it. I know that sounds maybe not the most ringing endorsement, but
I literally do that. Yeah. I've gotten into kind of a routine of like almost every night I fall asleep to the CBS Radio Mystery Theater. So
excellent content for falling into unconsciousness for. I can only hope that listeners feel the same way about us.
Exactly.
Talk to you next week, John.
All right, later, Fred.